My name is Nkechi Anyanwu, and I'm going to be hosting this panel on Code Switch, exploring switching disciplines in tech. I think this is going to be very interesting because everyone on this panel has moved from various disciplines into different disciplines in tech. And I don't want you to just think about the process they use to transition. It would be good if you listen to the concepts behind how they approach transitioning and how they found out that what they're doing now is what they wanted to do. So the structure of this conversation is going to be me having them answer some introductory questions. We'll ask some specific questions based on their experiences. We will talk about the overall themes from their transitions, and finally, there'll be overall questions. And then we'll have room for questions from the audience. So the first set of questions, I'd like each of you to introduce yourself, let us know what your role is and the pivots you've made to get to this role.
Hello, my name is Milena, and I'm currently a machine learning engineer here at Lyst. My journey has been a bit of like zigzag. So I started outside of tech. I studied marketing, and even then I wasn't super set on a career path, but I was like, okay, let's go, let's see. I think that's interesting. And I did some internships in marketing, and I was like, I was doing like digital marketing, but in the internships, it was mostly post this picture or like today is this day, find a quote. So I didn't find it very interesting. Maybe it's because it was internship, but I was like, okay, strategic side sounds a bit more interesting to me. So through like some kind of events and like also networking with people, I found out about disciplines like business analyst, data analyst, and I was like, maybe that's like the bridge, because nobody would let like a total beginner be like, oh, that's your business strategy. So, and yeah, I did some courses. I guess I don't know if I should get in detail.
Let's say the pivots first.
Yeah.
When we ask.
So yeah, eventually ended up here in Lyst in like some sort of like data quality analyst role, then moved to data science, and then machine learning engineering, which is what I still do.
Cool, thanks. Hey, I'm Ratuja. I am currently a senior backend engineer and tech lead here at Lyst. So my background, I studied physics and maths in university with the idea that I wanted to go into astrophysics research. So I worked in an astrophysics lab in university, worked for like 3 years there, and didn't really love it. I think it was maybe just research wasn't for me, but that was my first introduction into Python, and I was analyzing a lot of data from data about supernovae that we get from radio telescopes. And I really enjoyed that part, but I didn't enjoy writing research papers and the physics part of it. So after university, I got a job as a data scientist in the political sector. So we were working with different campaigns and committees, kind of using data and data science to advise them on their campaigns and essentially also predict elections and turnout and advise them on their messaging. I really loved that. So that was in the US. And then after that, I wanted to move abroad, and I wanted to work at an early stage startup just to get the experience of working at a startup. So I found a job here in London as a data scientist. I was the fourth employee there. And yeah, kind of just flew over and started working. And that role was very different, even though the title was the same. So I think in my first job, I was writing a lot of scripts using data science and doing a lot of analysis and creating data visualizations to share with clients. Whereas at the startup, I was writing data science algorithms to go into a product. So it was the first time that I had to really care about code quality and testing and writing production level code. And I think that was something I really enjoyed. And then there, I kind of got the opportunity to do more software engineering work, doing a little bit of front end work, and I really loved that. So then once I was ready to move on from the startup, I wanted to focus more into software engineering roles, which is what landed me here at Lyst.
Hello, everyone. I am Laura, and my current role is senior data analyst. My journey kind of started in high school when I interned at Ralph Lauren. And I did stints in corporate and in retail. And very early on, fell in love with the fashion space and was like, "Ooh, I know I love this. This is so interesting." Then I got into my dream university, which was UCLA, and they didn't have a fashion program or a business program. And I was like, I care more about the school. This is what dumb 17-year-old Laura did. I cared more about the beach and the city than I did about what I was doing at school. But I was like, you know what? I kind of like geopolitics. And that was a degree that I could do there. So I got into geopolitics on the premise that it would make me a better citizen. So not because I actually wanted to really do it. And then while I was there, the 2016 election cycle happened and America became super polarized. And I'm a people pleaser. So I was like, I can't do this. People are so mad no matter what I say. And Brexit happened. I was like, everything I know about politics in the world isn't true. So I have to get out of here. And so it was that in those moments that I was like, I'm going to do a master's degree in fashion, which I know I love, but I had done no education in it. And so I came to London to study at Condé Nast College of Fashion and Design in Soho, and absolutely like fell in love with the entire industry and was like, this is where I want to be. But at fashion school, I don't know if anyone else has been there and had this experience. It's a lot of creative thinkers and people that are really into like buying and merchandising and marketing. And I was like the standout math nerd. And I was very corporate and very analytical and really like commercial thinking. And I just knew that I wasn't going to go down the traditional fashion path. So then kind of was like looking, okay, what if I found a fashion company and applied my skills to the fashion sector? And very, very early on in my degree, we actually did a vocational workshop on Lyst. So I was like, ooh, fashion tech. I think this is like the perfect intersection of my skills, my interests, my hobbies. And then I basically hounded our, she still works here, her name's Sarah, our talent acquisition director. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I love the company. Can you help me figure it out? And she was like, who are you? So I spoke to her for ages, and she was actually like my biggest cheerleader in the process. This new uni grad that had never had a proper 9-to-5 job basically helped me work out what job I'd be right for, and over months waited for the right job to open up. Reached out to me. I had 6 months after I'd applied and first started speaking to her, and was like, "We've got it. We've got the job." So yeah, sometimes you just need one person to believe in you, and that's how I ended up at Lyst. And then my pivot at Lyst started in a team that was quite backend, and I knew I wanted to do more commercial and strategic stuff. And so I was really obsessed with the BI team and was like, you know what, I'm just going to bother them and hang out with them. We had an old BI director, Rob, who was amazing. And I just would pick his brain every chance I could. And I knew that was the team that I wanted to go into, and it aligned more with what I was trying to do within my career. And that's where I've been ever since.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a senior full stack engineer at Lyst. I've been here for 8 months, but I'm a boomerang, so I left for a year because I needed to move cities, and then came back. But I was here for 2 years before that. And like Lara, I also worked in fashion before transitioning into tech, but I didn't really see. I mean, I did philosophy at university, so it wasn't something I studied, but it was something I was always interested in. But I didn't really see a long-term career for myself there, just because you're just like at the bottom for like a very, very long time. And I'm just somebody that needs like some progression. And I saw that the only real way for me to progress was to like step away from the day-to-day that I enjoyed, and just become a manager, which is a great thing if that's what you want, but not great if what you enjoy about your job is the day-to-day. And I was just talking to a friend who also did philosophy at university, and she had just decided to do a computer science master's, and she was like, you should try coding and you might like it, which I thought was really odd, because I was like, why would I like that? But I actually tried it and I did really enjoy it. I guess like the logical thinking of philosophy does really apply to programming. So then I started to think about it more. I took a course after work with Code First Girls, that was free as well, so it was great like to just try it out. It was like an 8-week course. They have a bunch of different courses. So it was like choosing what path I wanted to go down in tech. And I had a little bit of experience with HTML and CSS from like tweaking my MySpace profile, and also Tumblr, if anyone remembers those. Yeah, that's how old I am. And yeah, I was like, I think web development makes sense. Like I can see it, I think it's like a quite easy path in terms of it's something you can relate to if you're just a user of the web. And then you can see things change when you write code. So that was sort of my first foray into it. And through doing that course, I was like, I actually think I could do this every day. So I decided that I wanted to get into tech. I didn't really know how. I found this boot camp called Founders and Coders, which is also free. And it's like an 18-week boot camp. Now it's an apprenticeship. But at the time, it was a full-time boot camp. And I just set my heart on getting into that. I came to a lot of codebar workshops to like get my JavaScript skills up to scratch, because that was just what was on their curriculum. And yeah, that's a web development bootcamp. So I did that. And then through their grad scheme, I got like a really short contract as a front-end developer with a startup. So that was just like always going to be 3 months. We shipped the product, we left. That was always what that was going to be. And during that time, I was looking for my first full-time role. I applied to Lyst because, again, like the fashion background and it like really aligned. I got an interview for what I thought was a job in the web team. So I'm like turning up with my JavaScript knowledge and they're like, solve this in Python. And I was like, I've never seen that. What is that? But the interviewers were really, really supportive. One of them ended up being my line manager. And they like coached me through the interview, and like they were like, you can Google the syntax. We just want to see how your brain works. And because I was able to solve that Python problem, having never touched Python before, in that interview, that was like really sold Lyst to me as a place that like I could grow as somebody with literally no experience, apart from that 3 months that I did. So I ended up taking a backend role, which I never thought I would do. Like I thought I enjoyed being full stack, but it's like, if I'm going to be one or the other, I'd prefer to be front end because I come from a more visual creative background. But actually, I was in that back end role for 2 years at Lyst, and I started to decide that I wanted some more front end experience. I also went on a React conference, and that kind of reignited that passion for me. And I realized, yeah, I do want to do both. So then other circumstances changed. I ended up getting a front end role somewhere else because I needed to move to Manchester briefly. So I was working there, and then I came back, and actually Lyst had a full stack role available. And then I came back, and I've been here since October.
Thank you. I think after listening to all these stories, it's the consistent thing that stands out to me is that there's curiosity and then there's moving towards what you're interested in. How do you decide? And I mean, since you're holding the mic, I'm going to go back to you. How do you decide that what you're interested in is not just a passing fancy? It's not just, oh, I'd like to, update my Tumblr page again. How do you say, actually, my skills make me want to go in this direction, or my curiosity makes me want to go there? And I think you mentioned, I'm not sure if I heard it, that you quit your job at some point. What gave you the confidence to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me, really, because the job I was in was like, I was mid-level by that point, and I was like, so not being paid a salary that you can survive in London in. So for me, I was like, if I'm going to go into a career as a junior and earn more than what I earn now after 5 years experience, that's pretty good. So that was like the first draw, was like the remuneration that you get in this industry, but also opportunity, like flexibility, that really drew me to it. But yeah, obviously you have to enjoy the day-to-day. And I think I mentioned earlier, it was through doing that course that I was like, I could actually see myself doing this every day. And I wasn't getting, I was actually taking time out of my life outside of work to do this course. And I was really enjoying it. And obviously that, has to give at some point. You need to like not burn out. But the fact that I would come home and want to study was a big sign and indicator for me that I enjoyed it, because I don't really like studying that much. So it was clearly a sign that something there was drawing me to it.
And Milena, how did you, I mean, this goes into your discovery that you were interested in like business analytics, or you were interested in that role, heard about the concept. You later on transitioned into a role that was called a product analyst role. But what actually made you decide, okay, I want to do this particular role as opposed to maybe being a data analyst? Was it just, this is the opportunity that was available, or was it you being interested in that role at that point in time, or another third thing I'd comment?
Yeah, I guess I was still exploring. Like I wasn't set on like, oh, it has to be like something like a business analyst. And I was starting out, like I didn't have a lot of experience, knowledge. So at some point it was also, okay, maybe that's the entry point. And from there on, I figure it out. But also even on interviews, like it was stressed to me, like that growth and learning is valued in the company, and it's not like, oh, you will be stuck forever or something like this. So yeah, I think that was what I was like, okay, let me try this, because there was some opportunity to use like SQL, and like I was gonna be working with like people in data science and like be surrounded by something that I'm interested in. So I thought, yeah, why not try it?
These are two examples of people transitioning while they're working. I think there's also transitioning while you're in university. You might have studied something and then gone into the real world, or started going into the real world when you realize this is not what I want to do. So now going on to you, Ratuja and Lara, I'd actually like to know how you dealt with that awareness that what I've studied is not necessarily what I want to do with my life. And now I need to take these interests, these skills I have to find something else I want to do. How do you deal with that mindset shift? And how did you figure out that, wait, I'm going to go into something that's more data analysis, that uses the Python I already know?
Yeah, good question. To be honest, I'm not sure if I thought about it so much. And maybe it's because I was young and in university. I mean, I think I came to a decision point where, like, if I wanted to continue on the physics and academia route, I would have to apply for a PhD program. And I didn't have the motivation to do that because I just didn't enjoy studying physics that much. And I found myself like coding in my spare time and like just like trying to learn it in my spare time because I thought it was fun. And then like it was my senior year of university where I like actually took a proper Python course, and I really loved that, like way more than my physics courses. So I think from that I was like pretty sure that I don't want to go into the physics academia route and go into more of a like a programming route. And I think I also had in my mind that like if I don't like it, I'm sure there's a way to go back and figure it out. So it wasn't too stressed about that.
I would say there's two key themes that, like, when I look back on my journey to where I got now, kind of guided it. The first one is I did not wake up at any point and think, boom, I'm going to be a data analyst at Lyst. It was so slow, and it was so much overtime. It took me 10 years to realize, ooh, this is a cool career. And I don't think I'm done yet. Like, I don't think I'm going to be a data analyst forever. Watch this space. I don't know. I don't know what's next, but I'm really fascinated by other parts of the business that I always get like super energized by and empowered by. So I think that leads to my second theme, where I just continue to follow my strengths. So every day, not every day, as I just said, it's not every day, it's over time. But I would basically just realize like, oh, there's this one part of me that I really love and I don't think I'm using it right now. Or there's this one thing I know that I'm super good at and I think I should do something that it practices that more. And so like right now I'm in a massive, this is my current career drama in my head, is I really want to be meeting people more. And so I was like, how can I use my data skills to potentially go into sales or like brand development and brand strategy and like stuff like that. Like I think there's another layer where now I'm like, okay, I've done the data stuff that I knew I followed, and I followed these strengths throughout the certain series of my life. And now I'm kind of at another phase where I'm like looking up and I'm like, and maybe that does look like leadership in data. And if that's what it is, and being a mentor and a manager, and that's the next stage, then so be it. But yeah, it's right now I'm at another career reckoning where I'm like, what are my current strengths and how do I use them?
Thank you for that answer. I mean, moving on from that, that makes me think that careers are things that can be shaped. And you have moved from one side of the business into another side of the business. Milena, you also moved from one side into another side. How did you handle transitioning roles within the company? How do you handle saying, I've been in this particular role for a couple of months, a couple of years, but now I'm actually more interested in something more salesy? How do you manage relationships? How do you communicate with your employer to say, this is how I would like to transition, and what advice? Actually, we'll save the advice for later, but how do you manage that?
I'm going to answer before Milena because hers is the good side, mine's the not great side. And I very much reflect on what I did with like regret a little bit, because I basically started to have conversations with people in the team without really ever having conversations with my current team or manager. And it was never in spite of, it was never resentment. It was just kind of like, that's kind of interesting. And it was almost like a shiny object kid, which that's me. That is definitely me. But I was like, oh, there's a shiny object that I think I like over there. Let me go touch him. Like that was what it was. And so I just completely neglected the conversations that I should have had with my manager and put it in place, and been like, look, I feel like there's something really interesting for me in that team. And I think I've had conversations with the director, and I think that there could be a potential role for me there, because those conversations were progressing quite quickly. Before I even could look up to breathe and be like, oh, I haven't even told my manager. And so she found out from the other directors and not me, that they're like, oh, Laura's really interested in joining our team and we have a junior role coming up. We think we might give it to her. And she then put in a meeting with me. I was like, dude, what's going on? I was like, so sorry about that. So I wouldn't do that. I would be as open as possible with your current manager and your current setup. Just to be fair, they've gotten you to where you are, and I didn't do it on purpose, and I really do regret that. But Milena did better, so you're gonna hear that now.
Well, I guess the difference also in my case is like the role that I wanted was in the team. So yours was like kind of quite a different side of the business, and in my case, yeah, I could see every day the data scientists, what they do, and like get more and more interested and like talk to them, because I was mostly supporting them, like analyzing quality of our machine learning models, like being the human in the loop, basically. So then, yeah, I could discuss more with them, and they'll be like, oh, you're interested, join this meeting. Or like, yeah, having these conversations, and like also my manager, she kind of knew from the start that I have this interest. So she was very open. And yeah, I think from there on, things moved kind of fast, that I could get a mentor. So it was one of the data scientists. And yeah, I was doing like, I don't know, about 6 months mentoring with him. And yeah, I think it was pretty open, like the whole team knew, and like everybody knew like I was being mentored. That's my interest. So I guess maybe, yeah, it's core difference that it was within the same team.
And Hannah, how do you deal with the situation where you want a role within the company, but it's not available? For some people, that might automatically mean leaving. But tell us about how it was in your own situation. Was there even the opportunity of maybe creating your role?
Yeah, so I was in a backend team at Lyst for 2 years, but it doesn't mean that I didn't touch any front-end projects. So we had some internal tooling that we did use front-end technologies for, and I was actually the only person on my team that was really interested in doing that. So I did get those tickets, and I did get to work on those things, and also like collaborating with other people that also wanted to dip their toe in the front end. So I did get those opportunities, and for 2 years that was fine for me, because I was learning so much and I actually just really loved being in the team. But it wasn't until I went to this conference with some people from the web team where I was like, oh, actually, I do think I want this to be more a part of my role and not just an additional thing that I do from time to time. So I did actually start speaking to my manager about it, and he was trying to get me to transition into the web team, and everyone was being really supportive. But yeah, unfortunately wasn't really the way the teams were like split at the time. There wasn't much room for being full stack here. We just hadn't been set up that way. So through other circumstances, like Lyst doesn't offer fully remote working, and that's what I needed at the time. I did have to leave. And I did go into a front end role because I thought I really need to upskill there. And actually there I was thinking, have I done the exact same thing but opposite? So I was in a back end role, now I've gone to a purely front end role, but it turns out they just didn't really have enough back end resource. They knew I had a lot of Python experience. So I ended up becoming full stack like towards the end of my probation period there anyway. And they were also trialing the full stack thing. So they didn't have loads of things put in place, because I think that the main problem that you have if you're both front end and back end is that you just have double the meetings because you're like in all of them, and they hadn't quite worked that one out. So yeah, we were there working together, myself and the other full stack engineers, to sort of work that out. And it's just patience really, because had I been able to stay at Lyst, obviously these full stack roles have come out of business need eventually. But yeah, I was lucky enough to still be in contact with people here. And I was saying, you know, I'm looking for my next role. This is what I want. So for me, it was putting it out there that that's what I wanted. Like always keep in touch with people that you've worked with. But yeah, just making it clear that's what you want, but like having some patience. You're not going to be able to work on exactly what you work on for your whole career, exactly what you want to work on, sorry. But yeah, I think it was mainly luck as well, being in the right place at the right time. But I do think that had I stayed, it would have been probably a similar trajectory. There's just different reasons of why I left for a bit.
We're going to go on to the overarching questions. So I think I'll start with Ratuja. How do you look at your career now? You've transitioned, you've done about 2 pivots, I think, university and then while you were working. How do you look at your career? Is it a series of, you know, steps that are already planned, or do you take what comes and make the best of situations? Or a third thing?
Definitely not pre-planned. I think hard to pre-plan anything. Yeah, I think a lot of it has been taking what comes and just listening to what I enjoy. And I think Hannah made a really good point of like voicing also what you like and what you want makes a big difference. And I also don't see my career as static. Like I'm doing backend engineering now, but I don't know if that's what I'll always be doing. And I'm like love learning, so like excited to try something new in the future as well. So I just see it as like endless amount of pivots and trying new things. And yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but not static.
Yana, what do you think? What's your own perspective?
Yeah, I think kind of similar to Ratuja is like I really didn't have things figured out, like kind of last minute decided what to do in university. So it was like kind of going with the flow. And I think there is a point that until you get somewhere, you don't really know what's out there. Like I only knew about these roles because I met people and they told me, oh, you're interested in this? Well, this exists. Like, why don't you check out this course? Like when I was choosing what to study in university, I had no idea about data science, machine learning, all these kind of things. So yeah, I think now that I'm in my role, then I see maybe I enjoy certain part more and I'm like, oh, what is the path I can take to do more of this? So I think, yeah, it's all around, like just go see. And I think, yeah, we're being sold when we're like quite young. There is like, you take this choice one and you don't change, but I don't think that's how it works out in real life.
Next question, what resources did you use for your transition?
To be honest, I didn't do that much. I kind of knew my front end skills were sort of rusty. But luckily all the code bases we had here are quite legacy. So that was kind of fine. I honestly just learned on the job. Like I got this front end role and I was like, once I got the job, I was like, like, well, I've done backend for 2 years. Like they're going to expect a lot from me. So for me, it was more like just immersing myself in this new world that I feel like I'd been kind of neglecting for a couple of years. The good thing is that it wasn't too, I think once I was at that stage of my career, you know, you're at a stage where you can pick things up quicker than when you were first a junior. So like I had a few years under my belt, knowing how to look for the right things. So if I didn't know anything, I knew what to look for. So for me, like there wasn't anything in particular that I did. It was more putting myself out of my comfort zone, really, and then proving that actually.
What does that look like, putting yourself out of your comfort?
Yeah, I mean, I like went to a fully front end role without really having that experience. And then needing to prove that to the team I was working in. But yeah, I think that putting myself in that position was like a classic fake it till you make it, because nobody was like, you don't know. Like I had passed probation, so it went well for me. But yeah, it wasn't like particular resources that I looked at, but more applying everything I knew from my previous role. The only difference is the programming language, really. All the other concepts were the same. So for me, it wasn't like a huge pivot in the way that other people have like gone from one side of tech to the complete other side. I think, yeah, obviously full stack web development is quite married in that sense. So for me, it wasn't particularly difficult.
Lara, what would you say?
In terms of putting yourself out of your comfort zone or tools?
I would say both now.
Okay. So I think in terms of tools, the first step is like self-awareness of how you learn. And the best way of learning, like I am not a routine person. And so structured 4-week courses where you have to do a task was never going to work for me. And I spent some of my training budget on it and barely went. And sorry, Lyst, if you're listening. So that is just not who I am. And I was totally kidding myself signing up. But there's, I don't know if anyone here has heard of Udemy or Udemy. They are so great value, cost-effective tech courses. And that's how I taught myself SQL. And the second you give yourself this basic understanding of something, start just immersing yourself. Because if you throw yourself into SQL and you're just start trying to read code, that can be hard. But if you give yourself just even the quick lesson, 0 to hero, shout out to the course, from that, I could read SQL and I knew exactly what it was doing. So that was like my first step to be able to just, then I could throw myself into the Lyst code base and be like, I know how that connects because I saw apples and oranges connect in the tables they have in the course. So that was that. And then the second thing is there's so many ways of ingesting information nowadays. Like there's podcasts, there's short form videos on TikTok and YouTube shorts, there's long form videos, there's documentaries. So figuring out what your attention span is, and mine is very short. So I'm a TikTok girl, but like me and my boyfriend, we found this marketing guy that we love on TikTok and we send each other like nerds his stuff. And we're like, oh my God, look at this new marketing thing that he said. And then there's also like sending podcasts. There's so much power in when you think somebody that you work with or that you know will like something that you've heard. And there's some great speakers on like whether it's business or tech. Even Brian Chesky, the old Airbnb CEO, how he talks. He has a podcast out that talks about product thinking. I don't work in product, and I'm fascinated by his way of product thinking and product marketing. So yeah, just immersing yourself in like the ways in which you enjoy receiving information and applying that to the field.
Question to everyone, and I think we'll start, since you're holding the mic, we'll start with you. What's your advice to people who want to switch disciplines in tech? What would you have wanted younger you to know?
Sure. I would say following your strengths, big one. Even when you're like trying to figure out what you want to do, for me, it's like I love going to talking to people. So I went up to one of our VPs of product, and I thought for a second I wanted to be a PM, and I was like, that's product manager. Sorry, lingo. And I was like, can you tell me everything about your job? What does your day-to-day look like? What are the things you love about it? What are the things that you want to do less of? What are the things you wish you could do more of? And he ran me through his entire basically job in 5 minutes. And I was like, that does not sound like anything I'd want to do. So it's also knowing what you don't want to do. I think that's one of my main things was like, okay, don't want to be a PM. I'm not a stats person, so I didn't want to go down the data science route. And then it was also about the strengths that I had. And so it was like, okay, where does like fashion and qualitative intersect with that quantitative math side, the more commercial strategy side that I know that I really love and comes more naturally. And so, yeah, and just honestly, in terms of advice, talking to people that are currently doing those disciplines, ruling things out, and then digging deeper if things are interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with playing to your strengths, but also like what interests you, because you can just spend a long time trying to fit yourself into the wrong box. But what makes you really good at your job is that drive to improve the way things are, not just do it like to a basic level. And that's the way that you progress. So if you're in a job that you're not that interested in, you're not going to be motivated to be better. So find what interests you, and then like you can always go back. Like there is almost no risk in exploring other avenues. And maybe if you are looking for a new role, ask them, what's your internal mobility like? Do you encourage people to learn outside of their role? You know, how will you support people that want to upskill? Because that's really important to know that you'll be supported, and that you're being hired for your skills and not just to fulfill a particular role, and that you can grow with the company. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, maybe similar to what Laura said also. I think just saying what you want to do, because I think people like helping each other. So if you say like maybe if you're a data scientist and you're interested in more engineering, and you just say like, I'm interested in engineering at a company, people will find ways to help you and say like, oh, like maybe this is a little bit of work you can do and learn in that way, or talk to this person. They might have something that you can use to learn. So I think just the more you tell people, the more chances you have of people helping you out in that way. And then, yeah, just say like keeping an eye out for opportunities. So again, like if I think Hannah did this really good with front end work, like if there's internal tools and like front end work you can do there, using that to learn as well.
I guess mine is especially if you're junior, if like you're doing non-tech to tech switch, like lower the expectations on yourself. Because I know when I start, I was like, oh, everybody knows everything. And I'm here, I know nothing. And it actually takes knowing some things to know there's a lot more that you still don't know. So I would say, yeah, don't expect of yourself, oh, I need to learn absolutely everything before I can apply for this job, before I can ask to be involved in this project. Like, obviously you can start learning some things, but you'll find out like most of the people, yeah, don't know everything. And they're very open, as Ratu just said, like helping each other. And yeah, just teaching you some things. So yeah, I think that's my advice.
So final observations before we go for questions. I think something that's really cool is that they kept on noticing what they liked, what they were interested in, and they almost iterated closer to what they wanted to do. So this might not be their final form, but at this point in time, this is something that is closer to what they want to do than maybe one job ago or 2 jobs ago. The second thing is that they tried to test out in some way what they were interested in, whether that was through some short courses or speaking to people. I mean, talking to somebody can help you figure out that a role is not for you, no matter how nice it sounds or interesting the lifestyle might be. Some roles might just not be suited to your personality or what you really would like to do. I think the transferable skills aren't talked about enough. Things that you might be doing in a role that you don't completely like could find a better expression in a different role. So it's also important to say, what am I doing now? What do I like? What am I good at? That I could use to pivot into something else. So I'm not starting from scratch. Maybe I use Python at a research lab. I can use that in a different role. Maybe I have this passion for fashion. I can use this in a fashion type company. And I think finally it's important to note that in hindsight, transitions seem straightforward. It's easy to say, I did this, then I did this, and then I did this, and now I'm here. But they're only here today. And in a sense, we're all also only here today because we kept moving forward. So that's just the closing note of this panel. It's just continuing to move forward, iterating closer to what you think you would like to do, and allowing yourself to move out of it if you realize, wait, I don't quite want to do this. So with that, I will open the floor for questions. Does anyone want to ask anything to the panelists? Any questions?
Hi. Yeah, first of all, thanks for the talk and lovely views of the office. But yeah, I just wanted to ask perhaps Natija and Milena about how you worked in the role beforehand. What are the differences of those roles? They're fairly similar, and perhaps how did you bring forward the experiences that you had, and how did you kind of keep that level of seniority that you had in the previous role? Or if you didn't, what are the kind of compromises that you had to make?
Yeah, so in my case, I think, yeah, that's also kind of important to note because like machine learning engineering or even data science, it will differ wildly in companies. And at first, when starting out, I thought, especially when I moved to machine learning engineer, I was like, oh, it's probably well-defined, like I will be doing this, this, and that. But then in the end, it's like quite open. You can go in actually model development, all these kind of things, like really go deep this route, or like you can go really MLOps kind of thing, like almost full-on engineering. And in this way, it takes some figuring out, like, yeah, what you prefer. Sorry, what was the second part of the question? The second part of the question?
In terms of seniority, obviously
yeah.
you've had experience from the previous roles. Did you manage to keep the sort of same level of seniority? Or if you didn't, what are the compromises that you had to make?
Yeah, so in my case, when I was like product analyst here, I've made it to senior level and I was very conscious and it was communicated early on that when I move to data science, I'm gonna go like to the lowest level, like associate. So I couldn't go senior, like no way from just being mentor for half a year. So I guess at least it was helpful that salary level is kind of similar because of you're just in different areas. So I was very fine with that. And then it was kind of similar when I moved to machine learning engineering, I kept the same level. So yeah, I didn't have any trouble with that, but I see how if you're like very senior, it might be harder to, yeah, accept maybe going down a step.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I've definitely, so this is my third job, and I think I've definitely learned a lot from each transition. So like, for example, my first job was data scientist title, but it was also a lot of consulting work. So speaking with non-technical external clients and kind of telling a story with data and data visualization. So I think that's really helped me in my current role with communicating to non-technical stakeholders, and also like in a leadership position, telling stories and yeah, like communication and in general. So I think that's one thing I brought from a previous role. And um, and then I would say in terms of seniority, so I think I honestly also got very lucky in that I went from a data scientist to a senior engineer, even though it was my first engineering role. But I think I learned a lot from the job in between, which was a lot of engineering work and in interviews, like really emphasizing, like, I know I was a data scientist, but I've done a lot of engineering work too. And then also like coming into a senior engineering role, there's so much I don't know, like, and I think it can be humbling, but also the nice thing about tech is like no one can know all of it. It's like by the time you learn it, something new is going to come out and you won't know that either. So I think that has helped me stay like feeling okay that there's a lot that I don't know, even with like a senior title. Um, and then I also like keep in mind like, oh, I don't know this part of engineering, or like so many other software engineers know this, but I'm like, well, I have like a data science background. Like I did R and SQL and other languages that I maybe don't use today, but it like helps me remember like, oh, I have other skills too from the past. So it's okay that I'm learning something new. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the talk. So my question is, if you come from a non-technical background, how was the part that was like getting into the industry, especially the technical interviews? Like, how do you handle that? Because I guess that's like one of the first hurdles. Because if you're in a non-technical role, normally you just go and interview, but you have to take a different approach going to a tech role. I guess it's, yeah, for Lara. I mean.
I'd like to answer that because I started out in investment banking and now I'm a full stack software engineer. So I think part of it is knowing the hurdles you want to jump and sticking to that. So I knew early on that I didn't want to grind on lead code for my first job. I knew that what attracted me to coding was the fact that I could build things. So I prioritized companies that would have me do practical technical assessments. So for the role that I'm in now, it was actually a one-stage technical interview. And they asked the question, they said, given a phone number or an email, how would you assess the likelihood of fraud risk? Immediately, you're thinking, you're doing some research, you're building things. I wanted to do that as opposed to doing a lot of data structures and algorithms. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to do that, but personally, for the way I wanted to get into the industry, I wanted to do something practical, especially since I don't necessarily have all the data structures and algorithms knowledge, but I know it's something I could learn on the job. So that's one way. If you know that you would like to learn how to do lead code, maybe the companies you're interested in, that is something they do, it might be a necessary evil for you. So I think it's going to companies that understand that you might not have worked in software engineering before, but it's the problem solving mentality, it's the ability to say, there's a problem, how do I solve it? As opposed to being able to just answer a list of questions. That's what I would say.
Okay. Thank you.
I can add something to that. I can say that as well. I lucked out that I didn't really have technical interview. Like I had a take-home SQL test, but I would say like if you're really struggling with this and it's causing like, I don't know, being anxious and actually not showing up to interviews, you can also consider, oh, what are the companies like I really love, and maybe try to get into some similar role, but maybe it's slightly different path, and then we've pivoted internally, and that's also on the table. Obviously, maybe you wouldn't want to start doing that, but it's an option.
Hi, thank you for all your wisdom. So I have my question is about imposter syndrome. I have a really bad case of that. It's never gone away, even though I've been working in tech for like 5 years, and even though I guess I got better and better, it never went away. Any of you have any advice on handling that?
I took this because it's so relative for me right now. My manager, his last day was today or tomorrow, whenever this week, and he recently went on his honeymoon, and so he's just been in and out the last few weeks. And I have had to step up into these. I was a junior analyst 2 months ago. I only got promoted to senior literally in May. And I am now stepping into prioritization meetings. We have a new CMO and I'm pulling data for him. I can't even talk about LTV right now. So I am like completely like, yeah, I'm senior. So he comes in, he sees I'm senior and he's like, oh, senior analyst, Laura, can you help me with this? And I'm like, oh my God, you know nothing about me, but here we go. And I have really had to be thrown into the deep end with my manager going, and it will continue to happen for the next few months. So first of all, I'm with you. Then it's just, I think for me, like no one knows what you don't know. Only you know what you don't know. Does that make sense? So I think like he is not sitting there thinking, okay, well, she's never done an LTV curve. She calculates it like it's cumulative net commission. Anyways, he's sitting and he's thinking, this is a senior analyst in front of me, and she's going to provide the answers to all these questions. And so I think that alone and repeating that thought has given me so much confidence. And in the last 24 hours, I have learned so much. And I think it's just, I hate the phrase fake it till you make it. But it is a bit of like just reminding yourself they don't know what you don't know. They don't know what you don't know, and giving yourself that confidence, and then figure it out in the evening, the next day, just figure it out later. Yeah, it's so much easier said than done. And I really empathize with that as well. But yeah, that's the biggest thing, is like building that confidence muscle. And it'll come. And enough practice at doing that, as in doing the role that you have the imposter syndrome and building the confidence muscle. Smooth sailing.
Yeah, I can relate to this a lot. Even today as well, like as Lara. For me, it's more like because I know like a little from many things, but not specialized in like one thing, which most of the people seem like. And the other thing that I would like to say is maybe, the company is quite supportive. And as Lara said, nobody's going to come like, oh, she doesn't know, and like treat you badly. So if you're in this kind of company, maybe it's not the right company. So I think, yeah, to me, what helped is actually bringing this up with like more senior people. So even when I was completely new, I was speaking to like director of engineering. At this point, like director was like, oh, wow, a creature that I could almost not talk to. And he was like, oh, imposter syndrome, I have that too. So, then it kind of, makes you realize I'm not the only one. And even people, maybe the CEO also has that. And yeah, it's worth talking to people. And if they are kind of toxic, maybe it's worth changing the company.
It never goes away, by the way. Imposter syndrome. Sorry? The microphone. You have a question as well? Okay. I did have a question before. One question? No, it's fine. You can have it. I was just going to ask if you have thought about... Okay, let's say there's a massive EMP and there's no computers in the world. What career would be your next career?
Okay, ready?
Everyone's got to go quick fire.
Dermatologist. After my medicine degree, I guess.
Do you know what? I would love to be an influencer because they get paid so much. I know that's still digital, isn't it? Mostly. Sales. Yeah. Like selling something really, bricks or fur trade, whatever.
I'd love to be a baker, and I like making cinnamon rolls. So.
I'd be a writer.
I would work in fashion, like I would make clothes. So, yeah.
I was just wondering, in your examples, did you end up making the switch wholesale from team to a new team, or did you end up like picking up tickets on the side alongside your main work?
Should I go for this first? Yeah, in my case, I switched team once, like the first time I was within the same team, and that was a bit helpful. Like I was still doing some of my old tasks, but every now and then when there was something kind of simple, but still like more related to data science, I could get started on this. And yeah, on the other hand, like when I moved teams, it was kind of, okay, I was doing tasks within that team, but I was still finding like, do I want to do more data science or like more engineering? So it was still like picking the smallest tasks here and there, delivering what I can right now. But yeah, on the side, maybe picking things, not like starting super big immediately.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Give me the mic. I'll be quick. I just started asking. So a lot of my tasks were manual in Excel, and I basically asked my manager. I was like, if I try SQL, it will take an extra half a day, but I'll learn SQL. And she was very receptive to that. She was like, yeah, go for it. Try it with SQL. And so I basically started just doing tasks using the tool. So the end output was the same. Like it was still a Google sheet or a CSV with the results she needed and the analysis she needed. But instead of just me wrangling based on chart functions in Google Sheets and Excel, I practiced in SQL. Same result, different method.
I learned a lot at the previous startup I was at. So I will say if you're like looking to switch career paths, a startup is a great place to do it because often there's just too much work and not enough people. So you say, I want to do this thing. They'll be like, great, please help. I think we had like one deadline for a customer and it was only like front end work, which needed to be done. And I think my manager was like, there's not really any priority data science work. Please, can you help us? And yeah, I struggled a bit, but jumped right in and really enjoyed it. So yeah, the advice is join a startup if you do want to try things.
Yeah, I've moved teams 4 times at Lyst, I believe. And that's according to business need and like what projects each team was working on and what skills I could bring. So it was sometimes you can do it within your team, but then sometimes they're like, this person keeps shouting that they want to do this, so like we're going to move them to that team. So it's kind of just making it known where your interests lie, and you might have to move, but then you can also say, you know, I don't want to move. And hopefully you get a choice. Sometimes you don't, but that's also fine. You have to be flexible.